Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. IRS Treasury disbursed another $37 million economic impact payments from the American Rescue Plan. IR 2021-63, March 24, 2021, Washington. Today, the Internal Revenue Service, the U.S. Department of Treasury, and the Bureau of the Fiscal Service announced they are disbursing approximately 37 million payments in the second batch of economic impact payments from the American Rescue Plan. This brings the total disbursement payments from the American Rescue Plan to approximately 127 million payments worth approximately $325 billion. So if you haven't got your economic impact payments, hopefully it's on the way. They are sending out a lot of money at this point in time. We're on the economic impact payment number 3. So just a recap on this. We've got the economic payments 1 and 2, which were basically tied to the 2020 tax return. Now we're on economic income payment 3. I think they're calling it EIPs now. So EIP 1, EIP 2. We're now on EIP 3. If you had any problems with EIP 1 or EIP 2, those are considered prepayments of the recovery rebate credit that's going to be on the tax return for 2020. So any problems with those, the remedy would be to file the 2020 tax return and see if you can get the recovery rebate credit for any difference there. The EIP 3, Economic Impact Payment 3s, are the ones that are going out at this point in time. Not much you can do about it in order to speed up the process or try to mitigate any problems at this point, because the IRS is basically on autopilot from the last economic impact payments. And once we've gone through that, once we have any kind of problems if any kind of problems arise, then hopefully they will give us guidance at that point. So as announced on March 12th, economic impact payments will continue to roll out in batches to millions of Americans in the coming weeks. The second batch of payments includes direct deposit, as well as paper checks and debit cards being sent through the mail. So the first round that went out, it looks like they tried to get the ones they could get to first, and those were the ones that were the direct deposits. So it looks like they're still sending out some direct deposits, but some of the direct deposit ones, the ones that they can put right into people's banks accounts, was what they tried to do first, because they can get the money out as quickly on those ones as possible, and they can report their progress, I believe, as quickly as possible there as well. And now they're sending out the paper checks and the debit cards. Those take, of course, a little bit longer for them, 1, to process, and 2, of course, to go through the mail. So here is an additional information on the second batch of payments. Like the first batch of payments, the payments announced today primarily were sent to eligible taxpayers who filed 2019 or 2020 returns. So in other words, you don't normally need to do anything for these right now. They're basically on autopilot. You've got round 1, round 2 out already. They copied the template for the most part, although they did make some adjustments to it. And then they're going to base the information on the prior tax return that they have. If you have 2019 but have not filed 2020, they'll base it on 2019. If you have filed 2020, many people have not because it's not due yet, then they'll base it on 2019. If you have, they'll base it on the 2020. And just like with round 1 and round 2, if you have any kind of Social Security payment and you're not required to file taxes, then they'll try to work with those other institutions in order to know who those people are and send them out there as well. If you receive the economic impact payments from that type of system and you don't file in rounds 1 and 2, you would think the same kind of remedy would be here as well. There is a little bit of confusion in terms of what happens if there's an adjustment for the 2019 or 2020 tax returns, depending on the tax return they base the payment on. In other words, it's likely that your 2019 income is higher than your 2020 income because many people, lost wages in 2020 and therefore their 2019 income is higher. Even though the economic impact payment is very standardized, it does have an AGI or adjusted gross income limitation. So it's possible that you filed 2019 return but not 2020. 2019 income is above the AGI limitation, so you don't get the full amount of the payment, if any. And then your 2020 tax return is much lower because you had much less work, in 2020. So if you had filed 2020, you would have gotten a higher payment. I believe they're going to remedy that situation by basically basing it on 2019, which means if your income is over the AGI, you're going to get a lesser amount. But then when you file the 2020, then they should pick it up automatically. It looks like you don't have to do the recovery rebate credit or anything like that for round 3. Rounds 1 and 2 you do if there was any problems, but round 3 it looks like they're just going to pick it up if you file the return and then possibly send out the difference on that. So we'll see if they give us some more information about that. People who don't typically file a return but who successfully used the non-filer tool on irs.gov last year were sent payments in this batch as well. So if you were in that situation, that whole thing last year where they were trying to get people that don't file tax returns and they don't have their information from any other source to use this non-filer tool to give them the basic information to send out the payment. If you had done that last year, you don't have to do it again this year because they have the information now and they should have sent out the payments to those individuals this time at this round as well. In total, the second batch includes approximately 37 million payments with a total value of nearly $83 billion. As part of that, this batch of payments includes approximately 17 billion direct deposit payments with a total value of more than $38 billion. These payments began processing on Friday, March 19th, and some Americans saw the direct deposit payments as pending or as provisional payments in their accounts before today's official payment date. In addition, this batch of payments includes nearly 15 million paper checks with a total value of nearly $34 billion and approximately 5 million prepaid debit cards with a total value of around $11 billion. So paper checks and debit cards, known as EIP card, which is obviously the cool name for it. You don't just call it a debit card. It's an EIP card, which is an economic impact payment card, began processing on Friday, March 19th, and will continue to be sent by mail over the next few weeks. As announced, there's a link to that announcement here last week. The first batch of payments was mostly sent by direct deposit. So once again, they sent out the first batch by direct deposit mainly because, well, a couple different reasons most likely. They want to get the money out as soon as possible. They're trying to encourage people to have the direct deposit information because that's what they prefer, and because obviously they can report their progress the quickest that way. So they're going to send those out. They sent those out primarily in the first round. Now they're getting all the other kind of areas, the stuff by mail, which will receive a paper check or debit card and so on. Here is additional information on the first batch of payments. The first batch of payments began processing on Friday, March 12th, and some Americans saw the direct deposit payments as pending or as provisional payments in their accounts before the official payment date of March 17th. The first batch of payments primarily was sent to eligible taxpayers who provided direct deposit information on their 2019 or 2020 returns, including people who don't typically file a return but who successfully used the non-filer tool on irs.gov last year. So in total, the first batch included approximately 90 million payments with a total value of more than $242 billion. The use of direct deposit to issue these payments means that they were disbursed remarkably faster than would otherwise be possible. So they're really trying to push the direct deposit, and they're really trying to show that it looks to me like they're really trying to show that they're doing a lot of work over there, sending out all these payments. So they're on the way, and inevitably there's going to be some problems with the payments. And of course, as the problems come up, we'll be able to, hopefully they give us some guidance on that. I don't think there's really much we can do to address any kind of issues with it at this point in time, because again, they're kind of like on autopilot at this point, just sending out the checks given the resources that they already have to do so, and reporting on the progress as they do that. So we have, while most payments were disbursed by direct deposit, Treasury mailed roughly 150,000 checks worth approximately $442 million. Additional batches of payments will be sent in the coming weeks as direct deposits and through the mail as paper checks or debit cards. The vast majority of all economic impact payments will be issued by direct deposit. No action is needed by most taxpayers. So again, for most people, the payment should go out. They already have the information. They got it last year when they did round 1 and round 2. So hopefully they have everything. It doesn't look like at this time they have the non-filer tool or anything like that, which they were pushing for all last year, because they hopefully have that information after having pushed for it last year. And this time they're just going to send out the payments, hopefully just based on and only needing the information that they have from the prior push, and if possible the 2020 tax return if filed. If not, then they'll base it on 2019. So many federal beneficiaries who filed 2019 or 2020 returns or used the non-filer tool were included in these first two batches of payments if eligible. For federal beneficiaries who did not file a 2019 or 2020 tax return or did not use the non-filer tool, the IRS is working directly with the Social Security Administration, the Railroad Retirement Board, the Veterans Administration to obtain updated 2021 information to ensure that as many people as possible are sent fast automatic payments. So just like kind of last year, they were looking at other federal payments that are going out. And if they have the information, they're trying to work with those other institutions within the government to give out the payments based on that same information. If you didn't have any payments from these kind of other sources and you don't file because you don't have to file, that's when you use the non-filer tool last year. They're not really pushing out the non-filer tool this year, presumably, because everybody who needed to use it hopefully used it last year and they have that information and can just go on that. So more information about when these payments will be made will be provided on irs.gov as soon as it becomes available. Individuals can check the Get My Payment tool. There's a link to the Get My Payment tool here on irs.gov to see the payment status of these payments. Additional information on economic impact payments is available on irs.gov. There's also a link to that here. There'll be a link to this in the description.